Hi, my name is Leonardo Hotta-guzman, and today I'll be talking about parenting styles across cultures. To start, I'd like to pose the question, is authoritarian parenting ever okay? In order to understand this, we need to go through two key concepts. The first one is parenting style, which are patterns of care, support, acceptance, and control, and it's used by the parents towards their child. In addition, we also have collectivist and individualist cultures. Collectivist cultures emphasize unity and social harmony, where the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the individual. In addition, an individualist culture emphasizes personal achievement and individual rights, and social groups are usually chosen. There are four main parenting styles. The first is authoritarian, which has high expectations and low support. We also have authoritative, which has high expectations and high support. We also have permissive, which has low expectations and high support. And we have neglectful, which has low expectations and low support. We also need to understand the cultural differences between the two. Individualist cultures value authoritative, while collectivist cultures value authoritarian. The next slide will show a graph that is going to show all four of these in a very easy to digest manner. The first key concept we need to understand is parenting styles. As we mentioned earlier, there are four main parenting styles, and they all vary in their levels of responsiveness, or support, as we mentioned earlier, and demandingness, or the expectations. As we mentioned earlier, again, individualist cultures favor authoritative, while collectivist cultures value authoritarian. We've provided a little graph here on the right to show the two axes of responsiveness and demandingness and where each of the four parenting styles lies on that graph. Permissive has low demanding and high responsive. Neglectful has low responsive and low demanding. Authoritative has high demanding and high responsiveness. And authoritarian has low responsiveness but high demandingness. We've noticed also that low demandingness is usually attributed to negative outcomes, while high demandingness, whether or not you're on the high responsive or low responsive, will usually lead to a better outcome across the world. Another key concept we need to understand are the differences between individualistic and collectivistic cultures. In individualistic cultures, like the US, Canada, and the UK, they value independence and self-expression, and they report lower on power distance, according to the Hofstede cultural dimensions. Collectivistic cultures, on the other hand, like Asia, Latin America, and Africa, value group harmony and respect for authority. In addition, they report higher on power distance. Power distance is the measure of power distribution in a society. High power distance means there's a big difference between authority and their subordinates, like a parent and a child. Low power distance means that there's low difference between authority and their subordinate. There have also been many research findings in recent times regarding parenting styles and their relation to culture. Xin Zhao, alongside a group of researchers, discovered that measurements of parenting styles across cultures were ineffective. This was because American audiences interpret questions differently than Chinese audiences. He concluded that questionnaires must be created with cultural context in mind. Martin Pincart and Rabina Kauser found that authoritative parenting styles usually led to positive outcomes for children, while authoritarian parenting styles usually resulted in negative outcomes for children. However, authoritarian parenting resulted in weaker negative outcomes in collectivist cultures than individualistic cultures. What does this mean? Essentially, the negative outcomes of authoritarian parenting were weakened or lessened in collectivist cultures like Africa and Japan than they would be in individualistic cultures. In addition, Jennifer Lansford, alongside a group of researchers, discovered that differences within a culture related to parenting styles mattered much more than between culture. Now, they defined within culture as the differences between people in the same culture, and between culture as general differences between cultures as a whole. We also found some examples of this parenting style difference in different cultures in practice. The first one was The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. This was a memoir written by Amy Chua, a Chinese woman, which compares Western and Chinese parenting styles. It supported strict discipline and high academic standards according to her philosophy on parenting. It was very similar to the authoritarian parenting style, which, remember, had low support and high expectations. However, she did later reflect on her memoir with critiques on her own parenting style after several critiques were made on whether or not the parenting style that she employed was the best for her children. Inside of the memoir, she says that her children grew up to be academically gifted over their peers at a severe psychological cost. Another example that we found to demonstrate this parenting style differences in different cultural contexts was a fictional case study in which Jenny, a young girl in elementary school, is given high praise for excelling in class. Her parents expect her to put effort into school, so this shows a high demandingness. However, her parents are disappointed when she fails, but they provide mental reassurance and resources to help her. This is going to be high on the responsiveness chart. She is allowed to spend time with her friends and purchase personal wants as a reward for succeeding. So here we're rewarding her for good behavior. Jenny's parents in this situation are using an authoritative parenting style. They have high expectations, the parents want to see Jenny succeed, and they have high support. The parents will praise Jenny and allow her to be independent. So, what are the implications of this research? Parenting is moderately affected by the culture surrounding it. There are stronger positive and weaker negative effects achieved by normative parenting roles. A normative parenting role is a parenting style that is in tune with the culture surrounding it. As we mentioned earlier, authoritarian for collectivist and authoritative for individualistic. Optimal parenting strategies lean towards authoritative parenting. However, this is not a universal solution. The negative effects of authoritarian parenting are weaker in collectivist cultures, and the cultural context must be considered by those comparing effectiveness of parenting styles in different cultures. As we mentioned earlier, Jin Zhao's research showed that questionnaires had to be fit for the cultural context in which they were used. More applicable for researchers instead of the parenting population. However, it's still an important thing that we need to consider. In addition, within cultural differences have a much greater effect on child development than between cultural differences. So, to conclude, we've discovered that there is a clear correlation between youth development and parenting styles. We also need to ensure that parenting style aligns with cultural context. As we mentioned earlier, if you use the correct normative parenting style within the correct cultural context, it's likely that stronger positive effects will be achieved and weaker negative effects will be achieved. In addition, as we were shown with Xin Zhao's research, future research into parenting styles will yield more nuanced results, as we know that real-life styles are not limited to just one category along the four axes. In addition, parents usually employ a mix of many styles. All of this is to say, parenting is complicated. The parenting styles we've mentioned here are not definitive, and the cultures surrounding them are extremely important to consider. This is a list of every source I had to reference in order to compile all the information you've seen in this presentation.